Hi there, my name is Raman, and this is my final video on the work that I've done so far in Review Board. So in my previous videos, I've discussed about a project where I had to create a rate limiting feature for the number of login attempts made by users in Review Board, and that code base is found in Giblets. So the current project that I've been working on, which is going to be about which is what I'm mainly going to talk about in this final video, is extending what I've done in my previous project by adding rate limiting to not just those login attempts, but for any type of API requests. So for any like get, put, post, and delete requests, for example. And that's also based in like Giblet's web API area. So here in this current file, this is the rate limit main rate limit functionality. This is where it's found. I had to modify it to ensure that I am checking whether I'm dealing with any login attempts that I'm trying to track, or if it's just for any given API request for any resource. And based on that, I divide my work, create my custom cache keys, and keep track of the attempts made by the users. So these are the tests. I'll show them that they're all running in a bit here, but there's just been slight modifications to make sure that I can test for both API and login attempts. So in order to allow any user to have that flexibility to choose if they want these API requests to be rate limited, I had to create a mixin class that overrides Giblet's web API resources call method. So I believe I have it open here somewhere. So yeah, right here. So I had to create this mixin so it allows me to override Giblet's web API resources call method. So if I go here, so right here, just overriding that. So before I override, I override this method by first checking here if the rate limit is allowed to be checked or not, and if so, I have to check if the rate limit has been reached or not. And if so, then I return an error that the maximum number of API calls have been exceeded. Otherwise, I update that request object by including some new headers, such as the statistics. The statistics include the number of attempts made so far and what the rate limit is. So that just allows for any client to see what's happening with their requests. So yeah, that's just what overrides Giblet's web API resource. This whole feature you see here is optional in Review Board, so I allowed it to be an optional feature there. And so it's not something that's mandatory for anybody to use, but it's just a nice feature to limit the number of calls made, since especially for very high traffic sites, that's pretty important to have. So yeah, I can try and run some tests here. So we can test, the test you see right now is for the basic rate limit functionality. So that's all passing. It tests for invalid parameters or if the rate limit has exceeded, and some other functionalities that the rate limit uses in order to calculate things properly. So this test is actually testing to see if the web API in Review Board is able to take in the input from Giblet's the new web API mixin I've created, like if it's able to override it. So it's just a quick one. Oh, I need to actually go to Review Board to actually run that. So that should work. So yeah, that's all good. And let me go back here. And I also had another set of tests, which is in the API backend in Giblets. So if I run that, that should also all be passing as well. So that tests for failed login attempts and just for any login attempts, really. So that's all passing pretty well. And yeah, mostly I could really show you code in this example, but in this demo, but I hope that paints a picture of what I've done so far during the semester. Thank you for watching.